Hello, everyone watching out there. It is your host here, Mateo Elvira of the Sales Dev Squad podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We actually have a very special guest for you today. We're speaking today with Omar Chawla, who is the SDR Enablement Manager at TripActions. We're going to be learning a little bit more about how he himself got into sales development, coming from a prior career in hospitality. Would love to learn a little bit more about some of the career pathing options and how he kind of has those conversations with his reps. And we'll also talk a little bit more about if automation would ever take over the SDR job as a whole in the future. So without further ado, Omar, thanks so much for hopping on. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Mateo. I'm excited to be here, excited to elaborate a little bit more on my journey. Not only in sales, but also in hospitality and ultimately how I got into sales.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Omar. Really appreciate your time here. I guess for our viewers, just to kind of give us a good baseline of, what TripActions does, would you mind just telling us a little bit more about what you guys do over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So TripActions is really changing the business travel world and ecosystem. And what I mean by that is we're helping, big companies like WeWork and Lyft and Dropbox, as well as, the smaller commercial sized companies like Robin manage their travel. Our ultimate focus is the traveler. And with that comes a lot of different to the business itself. Travel and expense generally falls under the number 2 or 3 lineup. Comes to the financial side of things, there's a lot of control that goes into travel, and TripActions helped with that. Not only do we help with cost savings, but again, we make the total experience seamless and fun. So with a high level, overview, TripActions, just recently we got our Series D funding at $250 million. Thank you so much. It's been really exciting. Things are moving very quickly. And just to step back a little bit, we raised another round back in November, and we were $1 billion valuation. 7 months later, we raised $250 million more dollars, 4x that valuation, now valued at $4 billion. So very exciting, a lot online, lots to do, staying busy.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you so much for providing some context as to what you guys are doing over there. Did get a chance to go through your guys' website and saw you guys are working with some major companies out there. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started here. Omar, I did get a chance to look at your LinkedIn profile, and one thing that really stood out to me was not only are you a local LA native with the 818 area code,
yes,
from the Valley myself. So but notice that you had an interesting path into sales development. You started in hospitality, got your degree in hospitality. I'm curious as to, how you got into sales development and, more or less like, why did you end up kind of veering off to a different path, given that it seems like you were pretty set, or at least thought you were pretty set on going into hospitality. So just want to learn a little bit more of like how you kind of got into sales dev.
Absolutely. I think ultimately what it came down to was building relationships. That is a big strong suit of mine. I like to talk, I like to develop relationships, I like to build relationships, and I love to capitalize on those relationships. And to take it a step back, in the hotel industry, you're dealing with people that you've never seen before in your life, and you are meeting them and you're giving them a good experience from start to finish. You're solving their pain of, working 8, 10, 11 months out of the year. They're on vacation. They want to make sure that, they're well taken care of and they're having a good experience. If I flip that over to the sales side, we're a solution and we are helping folks solve pains and issues that go into corporate travel. So I really felt those kind of, scenarios really mesh with each other. But ultimately how I got into sales and why I got into sales was I didn't have any of that experience. And I know that having sales experience is extremely important to kind of go any which way you want in any career path. So that was really the driving factor of me having a baseline of knowing how to position a product in a market where there's so much opportunity. And you know, like being an SDR is tough. It's a hard job. You know, you're grinding day in and day out. But ultimately, the hustle is something that I've always loved. And that's who you have to be as an SDR. You have to constantly hustle. You have to constantly think of the next best thing. But at the same time, realize who you're talking to on the phone or emailing on the other side of the email. And understand what their issues are, how you can ultimately help solve those pains.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's an interesting path. And I think it's so awesome to just see like how important that you saw how just having that sales experience and, you know, having that background in sales can really traject you forward. So that's awesome to hear.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, like, were there any challenges that you kind of ran into when you first started off as an SDR? And, you know, furthermore, were there any skills that, you know, that you gained from your prior roles within the hospitality industry that kind of helped you succeed in that role as well? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. That's actually a question that I ask quite a bit when I'm interviewing candidates is like, you know, the previous role you're in, how does that translate to what you can do in sales? And I think really what it comes down to, and speaking for myself, coming from hospitality and coming into a sales position, is I knew how to have a conversation. You know, I didn't position myself to talk to a prospect and be like, hey, we have this feature, we have that feature, we have this feature, you know, do you like it? Would you like to take a look at us? No, I wanted to have a conversation with that prospect. I wanted to understand, hey, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What are your issues, or what do you like about your current travel solution? And then just go into it, right? Hearing them out, really listening to them, acknowledging them, and knowing and being confident in the product that you have can actually solve a pain or a challenge. That's what I felt those two skills really translated well in coming into the SDR role. Being in hospitality, it was all about the customer. You know, your number one focus is the guest. You're always making sure that walks into your hotel and out of your hotel is happy. And I think I've come into sales with that mindset that every interaction that I have with every single prospect, I don't want to leave a sour taste in the mouth. I can take that a step further with even being like, when I first started as an SDR, you know, I would just put a bunch of people in a sequence or a cadence and just hit run and just blast, you know, a ton of people.
Yeah.
And that wasn't effective. And I didn't feel good doing that because I've been in the position where I've gotten sales emails and I could tell that it's a template and there was no personalization there. So I really started to kind of take the skills that I had learned in a hotel with personalization, understanding who that person is that you've never before, but being able to adapt to who they are and actually listen to them and acknowledge them and action based on whatever the role is or whatever the pain is.
Awesome. So it seems like just really being a people person and really understanding your ideal prospect was something that you've really found much success in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, you know, maybe there's another aspect to it, which is process. A big part of being an SDR is, you know, understanding a process that works or doesn't work. And early on in hospitality there are certain things that we could do for our employees to motivate them, you know, and there were some things that worked and there were some things that didn't work. So I feel that also translated into when I came here to TripActions, that if I was going to run a cadence or a sequence with certain messaging, but I wasn't getting any responses, do I keep going with that messaging? No. Let me take a step back. Let me reevaluate. Let me reposition my messaging and try it again.
Very cool. Thank you for that, Omar. And I guess like kind of going off of that, like it seems like you had a lot of great skills that you were able to translate from your prior roles. Seems like you kicked ass in your SDR role. And did you always know you wanted to get into sales management? Did you ever consider an account executive role? I'm just kind of curious, like what led you to your decision in like being in enablement and being, you know, managing a group of SDRs instead of being like an individual contributor? I'm just kind of curious if you could share that with us.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll actually be completely frank. So my track of being an SDR was fairly short in comparison to a majority. I really came in and worked my absolute ass off because I know I wanted to get the next step.
Yeah.
Even before becoming an account executive, I had a goal to get into customer success. And I thought that was going to be my next step. I was going to be an SDR, learn the product, learn the pitch, and then, go to the other side of actually managing accounts and account retention and adoption. But I was doing really well as an SDR, and I was like, well, if I'm doing this well on the sourcing aspect, why don't I take this a step further and move into the account executive role? So in April, was literally in talks with my account executive manager here.
Okay.
And, I was getting ready to move into an account executive role because that's the norm to go from SDR to account executive, right? And then so on and so forth. But then one thing that set me apart from, I guess, the rest of the group was I always helped with open arms. Every single cohort that joined TripActions, I had something to do with either their onboarding or their training. Mm-hmm. Because I was a strong SDR and I really knew the product very well, a lot of them would come to me for help, right? And I think leadership really started to notice that. And as TripActions started to grow, and we're a global company now, so we have offices in Palo Alto, which is our headquarters. I'm based here in San Francisco. We have an office in Dallas. We have an office in Chicago, New York, Amsterdam, the UK, Singapore, and Sydney. With SDRs sitting in each of those offices, there needed to be someone who could spread the message consistently across all of these different offices. And because I had touched each one of these SDRs, my director felt that I would be a good fit to start this SDR Enablement Manager role. So he literally tapped me on the shoulder and was like, Omar, I think you should do this. And I was reluctant. I was like, no, I want to continue selling. I'm crushing it. I'm crushing my number. I want to continue to make money. I'm hungry. I want to go. I want to just keep going. And he basically said, he's like, look, I don't disagree with you and I respect your decision. However, do me a favor and just put a plan together for what you would do for the SDRs for the next 3 months from your observations. And that was extra time that I would have to obviously invest into a project that I would have to present back to him. And do I not do it? And I kind of sat there and I was like, you know what? I'm young. Let me just do it and take the shot. So I put together this plan with no intention to actually move into a role. But when I was putting the plan together, I thought very, very, very hard through it. Just put something on paper, present it. I pulled metrics, I pulled data, I started top reps, our middle reps, our bottom reps. I started to analyze where's the disconnect, so on and so forth. And I actually enjoyed putting this plan together. Mm-hmm. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this enablement role.
Doing it at that point, I guess,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. So I put the plan together. I presented it. Did obviously needed some, refining and fine tuning, but at the end of the day, they saw the amount of work and effort that I put into it. And I myself realized that, hey, opportunities are endless. As long as you have that SDR skill, I'm just leveling myself to refine my skills as an SDR, as well as knowing TripActions even deeper and help SDRs here at TripActions. And that's really what fired me up to move into this role.
That's amazing. It's crazy to see your transition from where you kind of didn't really know you wanted to do it, but turns out you really were good at it and you were already doing it.
Exactly. And I tell my reps all the time that, keep an open mind when it comes to your career trajectory. Don't have tunnel vision. There's so many things that we're so good at that we discover along the way. And you know, I know you had mentioned like what motivates your SDRs. I think that's really one of them, where it's like we are all working towards the same goal. Let's work together. Let's coach each other. Let's share best practices, and ultimately, let's get TripActions to where they need to be, and let's get you to where you need to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess on that point, like, how do you make it as, you know, to where your whole team is one cohesive unit and we're all striving towards the same goal? Like, what steps do you take on a day basis, or what ways do you kind of help your team or make sure that, you know, everyone's working towards the same goal, working towards closed revenue, working towards book meetings? I'm just kind of curious, like, what steps do you take in order to make sure that, you know, everyone is working together?
Absolutely. I think a few things. I think one of the most important is being present. And, you know, I'm one person with 6 different offices, so technically it's hard for me to be present in each and every single office. But being present doesn't necessarily mean you yourself being there. What I mean by being present is basically having them realize that they, other than their own respective manager, to lean on for as a resource. I did that was I'm heavily involved in the onboarding process, and I run a few. TripActions has resources specifically for you SDRs. Priority is your product and ultimately helping you achieve your own goals. And again, I reiterate that multiple times through the onboarding. And that really just helps send us that, hey, I have someone that, you know, my manager as well as my peers, but someone who is dedicated to us as an SDR team to assist when needed. If I need to put a fire out, Omar's going to be there. My manager is going to be there. My colleagues are going to be there. Ultimately, that's one of the number one things. Second, I was once an SDR, so I can relate to a lot of the things that they are doing. Mm-hmm. I would say those are the top 1 and 2 things. So, you know, in regards to being an SDR, there are those months where you're struggling. You'll go a week without connecting with anyone. Keep your head up. You got to keep going, right? And I say certain things like, you know, I've been there, I know it, but one thing that kept me motivated was knowing that if I continue with the input, I'm going to see the output. And that message has sat well with a lot of different SDRs. And, you know, it doesn't just come down to, you know, volume where I'm sending out 500 emails a day and I'm making 60 calls a day, 70 calls a day, right? That's all great. I think that's fantastic. But how are we breaking through the noise? How are we being creative? And what I mean by this, Mateo, is I strategize with the team where every morning our managers throw a stand-up meeting, and times I can join them. So what I usually do is I come in and the manager will run the meeting, the SDRs will go through their goals for the day, and I will throw in an tip of the day, right? Recently, I'll give you a great example. LinkedIn voicemails have been kind of coming up in the game. And that has been my message. Okay. That has been my message for the last, I'd say, like maybe month or so. And just reiterating it, we use sales lines, and unfortunately you can't make it because it's mobile only. Just reinforcing that in meetings, I'm seeing a lot of good momentum. You know, we're personalizing, we're humanizing our outreach rather than just messaging someone on LinkedIn, messaging them over email, giving them a call. We're changing it up a little bit. We're double tapping, we're triple tapping. So I bring a lot of energy. Like you can tell from me talking to you. You know? I just, I'm a ball of energy, but I'm also super passionate about our product here at TripActions. And I think that's what it really comes down to. So, you know, being present, you know, knowing the product, being in their shoes not too long ago, relating to them. But again, just being passionate in our mission here at TripActions goes a very long way.
That's awesome. I could definitely feel your passion on the subject matter. And it seems like, at TripActions, at least the senior leadership team can definitely like just lean on everyone and have trust in everyone that, everyone's doing the best that they can every single day. So that's definitely exciting to hear. And, and I know like we talked about earlier, like when it comes to like motivating your reps, kind of has to go hand in hand with career pathing. I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you have these conversations with your SDRs when it comes to career pathing? Is that something that you introduce and talk to them in the very beginning when they're being onboarded? Is this something that you kind of introduce as they ramp up? Is this something that is built into the training program where it's just part of the curriculum as far as them just being resourceful, going out of their ways to see like what I want to do within this organization? So I'm just kind of curious for you, if you wouldn't mind sharing like some of the ways you kind of have these conversations with your SDRs.
Yeah, I generally, I try to lean on the managers for conversations like that. But we don't really bake it into onboarding. And obviously, what I'm telling you, we are a growing startup,
Sure.
Right? So a lot of things we're constantly evolving, we're changing. So what I could tell you now would be different 6 months from now, right? I don't think we have a formalized process, but it definitely when a rep comes in, day 1 through 14 is strict onboarding. They're drinking from the fire hose. They are, engulfed in information. They, so even having them think, okay, like my manager or whoever is asking me, what do you think the next steps are? I don't think is going to be effective for them. What I feel is most effective is, let's walk them through a step-by-step process. First, we want them to understand the product. We want them to understand our landscape, our market, as well as the process of being an SDR. Once they get that down, day 30 to 60 is, okay, I know this. Let me actually start doing it, learning from my mistakes, see where I can improve, report back to my manager, and take it from there. Day 61 through 90 is where we would then start to pepper in those conversations. And it's not a formalized conversation, but I do, after day 91, I join every single SDR one-on-one that they have with their managers. And we have a conversation as to, okay, day 0 to 90, we look at the data and we just talk to the rep to be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how you did. Maybe we could think about this. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, let's also take it a step further, knowing that you're also past your 90 days, like what are your goals here at TripActions?
Nice.
And one thing I mentioned it before is, your goals should not, what you're telling me now, it could change, right? And you could think back to my path. I want it to be in CS. I want it to be in hospitality. But here I am in enablement now. So ultimately it's a very light conversation, but it's reinforced in the sense of I report that back to our director, and he, I guess, in tune with what their goals are. So then that way, when the conversation comes around, hey, this is what I want to do, we can then properly craft a track to actually get there.
That's awesome. So it just kind of goes hand in hand with just having a leadership team, a management team that is very transparent and again, just leans on each other. That's just really the only way. Absolutely.
We're big about culture here at TripActions. Everyone's extremely transparent. We all have different goals. We all have different things that we want to accomplish. But at the end of the day, number one goal when coming into the SDR role is, okay, how am I going to get this craft right in front of me? Because again, being an SDR, you have to focus, but at the same time, for them to be so good at being an SDR and master the craft, they have to have a goal in mind. And that's why we do pepper in those conversations that we hear you, perform, hit your number. When the time comes, we will figure out a track as to how to get you to where you want to be.
That's awesome. And I guess kind of going off of that, like how important is training and development in TripActions, especially when it comes to SDRs. Because I've worked for a couple of tech companies that had really great training and development programs, but I also feel like there's also a lot of other organizations out there who don't really take the time to implement resources to help their team get better, to help equip their team to handle objections coming on the phone. So I'm curious, I know we talked a little bit about like your stand-up meetings in the morning, but like how important are those meetings and are the little things that you do on a day-to-day basis as a manager come into play when on a results page or, you know, on your SDRs on the out front? I'm just kind of curious if you could tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the stand-up meetings are definitely a piece of the pie, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And I like to keep it fun. I don't want to keep it where SDRs are like, another training, you know? And to answer your question, Mateo, training and development is extremely important. And having someone like myself, you know, as a resource for the SDRs, if I was to have that when I was an SDR, man, I would feel so great, right?
By now, right?
And like, you know, if I think about it now, one thing how I guess increase morale is, again, doing activities that are productivity based, that enhance their productivity, but keeping it fun. So whether it's an activity where, you know, I put 5, 6 within month and they have to work on something and present back and include a little incentive, keeps them motivated, right? I'll give you a prime example.
Please.
I do something called Build and Bruise, and we do it once a week. Okay. What that is, and we do it on Wednesdays, on hump day. I go out, I buy some like all these different types of beers, right? So like craft beers, IPAs, Pilsners, all these different kinds. Get some wine, get some cheese, get some snacks.
I'll be there for next one.
You're more than welcome to. You know, and keep it like, and the first 15 minutes, I have them bring a notebook and I have them write down what were the top 3 this week that they felt have gone well for them. They feel that they can improve upon. And it's a self-reflection. I don't have them present back. I don't have to do anything with it. It's solely for them. I've given them all notebooks specifically for that, so they with the same notebook each and every time. Then 15 minutes later, 5 p.m., the commercial team and the mid-market team and the enterprise team are split up in groups, and they are solely prospecting. They are prospecting for an hour straight productivity, getting ready for the rest of the week. And that is something that I've done in each and every office. What has that done for us? Well, we've increased our quota attainment by about 10 to 15% month over month.
Wow, congrats.
Because of the amount of, thank you very much, because of the amount of pipeline that we're generating. It's just been a constant flow, as well as our funding announcement has generally helped with that. But I feel, you know, throwing content at folks is awesome. It's great, but it's like, can they really articulate it? Can they really take it and learn from it? Maybe, but if they learn by doing, that's how you really the most impact.
And that's awesome to hear that you know the importance of training and development, but it's not just going to be a classroom setting. You're going to throw in a little bit of beer in the action, make it a little bit fun. They have something that they can always keep for future records, or just something they could always reference. So that's super exciting to hear how you guys are kind of shaking things up a bit. So thank you.
And one other thing that I really like is, room or anything, we are on the sales floor, and we are doing this on the sales floor. Okay. We sit on a floor with account executives. So for the account executives to hear me working with the SDRs like that, it also motivates them to be like, wow, like these SDRs are going to be ready to source some great deals. So yeah.
Appreciate that. All great information, and I'm sure a lot of sales managers listening to this will definitely be thanking you later. But Omar, kind of like shifting gears now, I could tell from like our conversation thus far that you're like a people person. You love talking to people. You love helping people. And I've read a couple of articles on LinkedIn as far as, you know, in 5 to 10 years from now, AI is going to take over all SDR jobs.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to hear, you know, what your thoughts are on that. Do you think that we will ever get to a point where AI will just take care of SDRs, or will we always need some sort of like actual person making these calls, making these touch points? I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I'll say yes and no. Is going to be obviously getting better and better, which could reduce the amount of motions that we're doing as SDRs. Do I think it will fully take away? I don't think so. Reason being is that humanizing touch, I feel, is so important. You know, and one thing, even when I was on demos with account executives, all of our account executives have to have their camera on so the prospect can actually see who they are. If you're using AI and, you know, advanced technology, that connection is not going to be there. So ultimately, yes, maybe a few of the things that we're doing will be taken away, but how are we going to become most successful? How are we actually going to sell a product? And that's still by doing what we're doing today.
Sweet. Thank you.
Maybe like later, LinkedIn will be advanced where we can send some sort of like self-made GIF. I don't know, you know, you never know. I think you can actually do that, but yeah, I really, it won't fully take away, but it's definitely going to limit, you know, us as SDRs. But I've been asked that question a few times, and I feel strongly on SDRs staying around.
Right. Yeah. I feel like at least if 20 companies start using AI SDRs, I feel like you just being a human SDR will already make you stand out. So
exactly, because a robot SDR isn't going to write like a why you now, right? Yeah. Or a robot SDR isn't going to cold call, you know, the CFO because the CFO just looked at my LinkedIn profile, right? So, yeah.
Great thoughts. Thank you, Omar. Do you want to be appreciative of your time? I just have one last question here for you. Sure. For any SDR that's listening to the podcast, or any person that is considering making the jump into tech sales, not sure if the SDR role is quite for them, but they have the grit, they have the adaptability, they have the passion for it, they want to try something new. What advice do you have for them to, I guess, take that first jump into like tech sales or even just a sales development role?
Absolutely. I feel sales, whether I go into a job interview, whether if I'm telling you, Mateo, about what I did for 4th of July weekend, you know, ultimately I am pitching you on what I did. When I go into a job interview, I'm pitching them on what I did to make sure that they hire me, right? For the SDRs listening out there, or for those who are wanting to make the jump into the SDR world, I encourage it, highly encourage it. Reason being is because you're going to learn skills that you will not learn in any other role ever. I think the foundation of having that SDR skill set is so important to take you any which way in your career path. Yeah. You know, and I'll use me as a prime example. Like, I'm now a coach and trainer, right? Who knows what my next stop is going to be. So ultimately, being an SDR is extremely rewarding. You can make a good amount of money. You can, you know, see deals in front of you close, which is also rewarding. But at the end of the day, you're going to learn a very, very, very good, I guess, group of skills that you would not get elsewhere. So those are my words of encouragement: is take the plunge, take the dive. If you can put in the work, do it, because it will be rewarding.
Of course. Thank you so much, Omar. I think that's really inspiring to hear, at least for myself. Like, when I started sales development, I was kind of a shy person, really was comfortable with the way I was doing things. And I think you're absolutely right. I think sales really pushes you and builds like foundational skills. So 100%. Thank you so much for your time today, Omar. I think the sales development community will really appreciate your words of wisdom. For anyone out there that's listening that wants to either connect with you or discover some of the career options and career opportunities that TripActions has available, where can they find you? And where can they learn more?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Omar Chawla, Chawla. Feel free to reach out. We are hiring for SDRs global. So I'd be willing to have a conversation with anyone, and feel free to reach out. And I'm happy I was able to join this podcast today, Mateo. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Omar. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sales Dev Squad. Feel free to like, comment, and share. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Again, Omar, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And hope you guys have a great one.
Thanks. Take care.